In 1815, Russia helped defeat Napoleon. This victory made Russia one of the most powerful countries in the world. However, even though Russia was strong internationally, there was growing unhappiness inside the country. Many educated people and army officers were unhappy with Russia's political system. Russia was ruled by an autocratic system, which meant the Tsar, or emperor, had almost complete power. Some of these unhappy officers and intellectuals formed secret groups. They wanted to end the autocracy and create a more liberal government. When Emperor Alexander I died, many people expected his brother, Constantine, to become the next Tsar. Instead, the throne went to his younger brother, Nicholas. This caused confusion. Taking advantage of this confusion, one of the secret groups tried to start a military rebellion in December 1825. This event became known as the Decembrist Revolt. However, the revolt failed. Loyal troops remained faithful to Nicholas and quickly defeated the rebels. The leaders of the revolt were executed by hanging. Others were punished by being sent into exile in Siberia. Exile in Siberia later became a common punishment in Tsarist Russia, especially for political prisoners. After becoming Tsar, Nicholas I created an official state ideology called Orthodoxy, Autocracy, and Nationality. This meant that Russia would be built on three main ideas: loyalty to the Russian Orthodox Church, absolute power of the Tsar, and pride in Russian national identity. This was a clear rejection of European liberal ideas like democracy and individual rights. During Nicholas's rule, Russia also expanded its territory. In the Caucasus region, border conflicts with Persia led to war. Russia won the war easily. The Treaty of Turkmenchai forced Persia to give up its lands in the region and pay a large amount of money to Russia. Russia also supported Greece in its fight for independence from the Ottoman Empire. This led to another war between Russia and the Ottomans. Once again, Russia won and gained more land around the Black Sea. In Poland, young army officers led a rebellion against Russian rule. Nicholas crushed the revolt harshly. Around this time, Alexander Pushkin, Russia's greatest poet, was shot in a duel and died 2 days later from his injuries. His death was a great loss to Russian culture. Nicholas I also sent Russian troops to help Austria stop a revolution in Hungary. Because he helped suppress liberal revolutions across Europe, Nicholas earned the nickname the Policeman of Europe. During this period, Russia began to modernize slowly. The country's first major railway was built between St. Petersburg and Moscow. However, many intellectuals still criticized the government. One important critic, Alexander Herzen, left Russia and moved to London. From there, he continued to call for reforms. Later, he became known as the father of Russian socialism. Meanwhile, the Ottoman Empire, often called the sick man of Europe because of its weakness, reacted to Russian pressure by declaring war. The Russian Navy won a major victory at the Battle of Sinope. However, Britain and France became worried about Russia's growing power and the possibility that Russia might control Constantinople. So they joined the war against Russia. This conflict became known as the Crimean War. British and French forces landed in Crimea and attacked the important Russian naval base of Sevastopol. After a long and difficult siege lasting almost a year, the city fell. In the Baltic Sea, British and French ships even threatened St. Petersburg, Russia's capital. Russia was forced to accept a humiliating peace treaty. It had to withdraw its military forces from the Black Sea and stop its plans for expansion in the south. The Crimean War showed that Russia was weaker than it appeared. Compared to other European countries, Russia was behind in industry, infrastructure, and military development. After Nicholas I died, his son, Alexander II, became Tsar. Unlike his father, Alexander II understood that Russia needed major reforms. The Crimean War had clearly exposed the country's weaknesses. One of Russia's biggest problems was serfdom. According to the 1857 census, more than 1/3 of Russia's population were serfs. Serfs were peasants who were forced to work on land owned by wealthy landlords. They had very few rights. They could not move freely, and their children automatically became serfs as well. In many ways, they were like slaves. In 1861, Alexander II made a historic decision. He officially abolished serfdom in Russia. Millions of serfs were legally freed. Because of this important reform, Alexander II became known as the Liberator. However, even though serfdom was ended, many problems remained. Russia still faced serious challenges as it tried to modernize and reform its political and social systems. Although Tsar Alexander II officially freed the serfs in 1861, life did not suddenly become better for most of them. In reality, many former serfs remained very poor. They often had to make payments for the land they received, and the land was usually not enough to support their families. Because of debt and poverty, many peasants continued to live in conditions that were not very different from serfdom. Alexander II continued his reform program. One important reform was the creation of local government councils called zemstos. These were provincial assemblies that had authority over local matters such as education, healthcare, roads, and social welfare. For the first time, some ordinary citizens could take part in local government. However, the Tsar still kept strong central control over the country. At the same time, Russia continued to expand its territory. In the Far East, Russia took advantage of China's weakness. China was forced to give up land to Russia. As a result, Russia founded the city of Vladivostok, which became its main port on the Pacific Ocean. Meanwhile, there were more rebellions against Russian rule. Poles and Lithuanians once again rose up in protest, but the Russian army crushed the uprising. In the Caucasus region, Russia finally ended a long and violent war against local tribes. Their leaders were forced to swear loyalty to the Tsar. Russia also expanded into Central Asia. Over time, Russian armies defeated the Emirate of Bukhara and the Khanate of Khiva. By the 1880s, Russia had taken control of most of the region then called Turkestan, which today includes Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan. This expansion led to rivalry with Britain. Both countries wanted influence in Central Asia, especially in Afghanistan. This competition became known as the Great Game. It was like a 19th century version of the Cold War. Instead of fighting directly, Russia and Britain used diplomacy, spies, and political influence to compete with each other while trying to avoid a full-scale war. During this period, Russia also made an important decision overseas. In 1867, Russia sold Alaska to the United States for $7.2 million. At the time, many Americans believed this was a foolish purchase and called it Seward's folly. However, gold and oil were discovered there many years later, proving it to be a valuable territory. The late 19th century became a golden age of Russian culture. Great writers and composers appeared during this time. One of the most famous novels ever written, War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy, was published. Russian literature, music, and art gained worldwide recognition. Russia once again became involved in war with the Ottoman Empire. This time, Russia supported nationalist movements in the Balkans. Russian troops crossed the Danube River and, with the help of Bulgarian fighters, captured the important Shipka Pass. Then they laid siege to the city of Plevna in Bulgaria for 5 months. After a long and bloody struggle, Russia and its allies won. Their troops even threatened the Ottoman capital, Constantinople. However, at the Congress of Berlin, European powers forced Russia to accept limited gains. Although Russia did not get everything it wanted, the war led to the independence of Romania, Serbia, and Montenegro, and later Bulgaria. Inside Russia, political tension was growing. Many radical groups believed Alexander II's reforms did not go far enough. They wanted a constitution and a more democratic system. Several attempts were made to assassinate the Tsar, but they failed. Ironically, just as Alexander II was preparing to approve new constitutional reforms, he was assassinated in 1881. In St. Petersburg, members of a revolutionary group called the People's Will threw a bomb at him. He died from his injuries. This group became known as one of the world's first modern terrorist organizations. Instead of bringing more freedom, the assassination led to a new period of repression. The government became stricter and political freedoms were limited once again.